Good evening, my friends. Tonight I want to share with you perhaps the most difficult yet most liberating teaching I have ever given. You must completely ignore what your outer reality is telling you. I can already see some of you tensing at these words. Your rational mind is protesting, but Neville, you're thinking, I have real problems, real debt, real sickness, real loneliness. How can I ignore what is right in front of me? And that is precisely the question I will answer tonight. Not with empty platitudes or wishful thinking, but with the profound understanding of how reality actually operates and how you can consciously use this knowledge to transform your entire life. What I am about to teach you will sound like insanity to those who are enslaved by their senses. But to those who are ready to claim their power as conscious creators, it will be the key that unlocks every door. Let me ask you something. Who told you that what you see is more real than what you imagine? Who gave your eyes the authority to dictate what is possible for you? Who decided that the numbers in your bank account have more power than the feelings in your consciousness? You have been hypnotized since childhood to believe that the physical world is the ultimate reality, that what you can touch and measure and verify with your senses is the truth, and everything else is merely fantasy or delusion. This is the greatest lie ever told to humanity. And as long as you believe it, you will remain imprisoned by circumstances, forever reacting to a world that seems to impose itself upon you. The truth is this: what you call your outer reality is not reality at all. It is a photograph of the past. It is a frozen moment reflecting consciousness that you held yesterday, last week, last year. It has no power to create your future unless you give it that power by continuing to react to it as though it were the ultimate truth. I knew a man who was so imprisoned by his outer reality that he could not even conceive of change. His business had failed. His marriage had ended. His health was deteriorating. Every day he would wake up and survey this wreckage. And every day he would say, "This is my life. This is what is real. This is what I must accept." And I said to him, "You are not accepting reality. You are creating it. Every moment you spend focused on these conditions, every thought you give to these circumstances, every feeling of hopelessness you indulge, you are impressing upon your consciousness the very state that will perpetuate these conditions." But these things actually happened. He protested. My business did fail. My wife did leave. My body is sick. These are facts. They are facts about what has already been created. I replied, they are the harvest of seeds you planted in consciousness in the past. But right now, in this very moment, you are planting new seeds. The question is, are you planting seeds of the same barren crop? Or are you planting seeds of a new and abundant harvest? You see, your outer reality is nothing more than the manifested result of your former states of consciousness. It is not happening to you, it is happening from you. And the moment you understand this, you gain the power to change it. Here is the principle that will set you free. Your consciousness is the only creative power in your universe. Not the economy, not other people, not luck or fate or circumstance. Your consciousness and your consciousness alone creates your experience. Every condition in your life, every situation you face, every person who appears in your world exists as they are because of the state of consciousness you have been occupying. Change your state of consciousness, and everything in your outer world must change to match it. This is not theory. This is not philosophy. This is observable, demonstrable law. The outer world is effect, never cause. It is the reflection, not the source. It is the shadow, not the substance. When you look in a mirror and see an image you don't like, you do not try to change the mirror. You recognize that the mirror is simply reflecting what stands before it. If you want to see a different image, you must change what is standing before the mirror. Your outer reality works exactly the same way. It is a perfect mirror reflecting your consciousness. If you want to see different circumstances, you cannot change the reflection directly. You must change the consciousness that is creating the reflection. A woman came to me who had been trying to manifest a new job for over a year. She had applied to hundreds of positions. She had networked tirelessly. She had done everything the world tells you to do to change your circumstances through external action, but nothing was working, and she was becoming increasingly desperate and discouraged. I said to her, "You are trying to change the reflection while standing in the same place before the mirror. You are taking action in the outer world while maintaining the consciousness of unemployment, of lack, of not being wanted, and the mirror can only reflect what you are broadcasting from consciousness." "But I'm trying so hard," she said. "I'm doing everything I know to do." "That is exactly the problem," I replied. Your trying, your effort, your desperate action, all of this confirms to consciousness that you do not have what you desire. You are standing before the mirror as an unemployed person desperately seeking employment. The mirror must reflect that reality back to you. I taught her to stop trying to change the outer world and to instead change her consciousness. You must assume you are already employed in your ideal position. I said, you must feel it, think from it, move through your day with the quiet confidence of someone who is already successfully employed. She struggled with this at first. How could she feel employed when she was clearly not employed? How could she ignore the daily rejections, the mounting bills, the concerned questions from family members? But I explained those rejections are reflections of your former state. They are old news, already on their way out. Right now you can occupy a new state, the state of being employed, of being valued, of being successful. And as you persist in this new state, the mirror must change. It has no choice. She committed to this practice. Every morning she would spend time in consciousness as an employed person. She would feel the satisfaction of meaningful work, imagine conversations with colleagues, experience the security of steady income. And throughout her day, whenever evidence of unemployment appeared, she would recognize it as old reflection and return to her assumption. Within 3 weeks, she received an unexpected call from a company she had interviewed with months earlier. They had created a new position specifically suited to her skills and wanted her to start immediately. The job was better than anything she had been applying for. The mirror had changed because she had changed what was standing before it. Now this is where most people fail in their manifestation attempts. They understand the principle intellectually. They grasp that consciousness creates reality. But when faced with concrete evidence that contradicts their desire, they cave. They let the outer reality dictate their inner state. They affirm abundance in the morning, but when the bills arrive in the afternoon, they panic. They visualize health at night, but when symptoms persist in the morning, they despair. They assume love in meditation, but when they face another lonely evening, they resign themselves to their fate. This is giving ultimate authority to the outer reality. This is bowing before the false god of physical evidence. This is allowing the mirror to tell you who you are instead of you telling the mirror who you are. To successfully ignore outer reality requires tremendous courage. It requires that you remain loyal to your unseen assumption even when everything visible contradicts it. It requires that you give more weight to your imagined reality than to your perceived reality. Let me tell you about a gentleman who demonstrated this courage perfectly. He had been diagnosed with a condition that doctors told him was irreversible and progressive. The medical evidence was clear. The symptoms were worsening. His prognosis was grim. Every expert, every authority, every piece of evidence told him the same thing. Accept this condition as your reality and learn to live with increasing limitation. But he refused. Not from denial, not from fear, but from understanding that the medical diagnosis was merely reporting on his former state of consciousness, and consciousness could change at any moment. He began to completely disregard the outer evidence. When symptoms appeared, he would observe them without giving them meaning or power. This is what was, he would say to himself. But what is now being created in consciousness is perfect health. He spent time each day dwelling in the consciousness of perfect health, not hoping for it, not working toward it, but assuming it, feeling it, thinking from it as though it were already his present reality. His doctors grew concerned. His family thought he was delusional, but he remained steadfast in his assumption, regardless of what the outer reality continued to show him. And gradually, impossibly according to medical understanding, his condition began to reverse. Tests that had shown deterioration began showing improvement. Symptoms that had been worsening began subsiding. Within a year, his doctors could find no trace of the condition they had declared irreversible. He had demonstrated the courage to disregard evidence. He had refused to let the outer reality be his master. And the outer reality, having no power of its own, had conformed to his inner assumption. So how do you actually do this? How do you ignore outer reality in a practical, sustainable way when you are surrounded by evidence that contradicts your desire? Let me give you the method I have taught thousands of people to use with remarkable success. First, you must understand that ignoring outer reality does not mean you pretend it doesn't exist. You acknowledge what you see, but you refuse to accept it as permanent or powerful. You see it as old news, as a fading photograph, as the dying echo of former consciousness. Second, you must create a new reality in your imagination with such vividness and feeling that it becomes more real to you than your physical circumstances. This is the key. Your imagined reality must feel more substantial, more true, more compelling than your physical reality. How do you do this? Through what I call the evening practice. Every night, as you prepare for sleep, you enter into your imagination with a specific purpose. You imagine a scene that would only exist if your desire were already fulfilled. Not a scene of getting what you want, but a scene that implies you already have it. A scene that takes place after your desire has manifested. If you desire financial abundance, do not imagine receiving money. Imagine what you would be doing with that abundance already in your possession. Perhaps you imagine writing a check for a charity donation with ease. Perhaps you imagine a conversation where you casually mention a purchase you made without any concern about cost. Make this scene specific, short, and sensory rich. Experience it from inside it as though you are actually there. Feel what you would feel. See what you would see. Hear what you would hear. Make it so vivid that for those few moments, your physical circumstances fade away and this imagined reality becomes your reality. Do this every night without fail. Fall asleep in this imagined reality, in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This impresses your consciousness with your new assumption. This plants the seed of your new reality. But here is where most people stop. And this is why they fail. The evening practice plants the seed. But you must nurture it throughout the day. Throughout your waking hours, you must practice thinking from your new assumption rather than from your current circumstances. When you face evidence that contradicts your desire, you must consciously label it as old reality and return your attention to your new assumption. If you desire abundance but receive a bill in the mail, instead of reacting with worry, you recognize this belongs to the old reality. In my new reality, I am abundantly supplied. Then you deliberately return to the feeling of abundance. If you desire health but experience symptoms, instead of fearing the worst, you recognize this is the fading echo of former consciousness. My new reality is perfect health. Then you return to the feeling of vitality. This is not denial. This is conscious selection of which reality you will feed with your attention and feeling. Because whatever you feed grows, and whatever you starve dies. Now you may be wondering, if I ignore my outer reality and dwell in my imagination, how will my circumstances actually change? Don't I need to take action? Don't I need to work with the world as it is? This is the beautiful mystery of how consciousness operates. When you dwell persistently in a new state of consciousness, pathways open that were invisible from your former state. Opportunities appear that could not have appeared before. People say and do things that create circumstances you could never have orchestrated consciously. I call this the bridge of incidents. You do not need to figure out how your desire will manifest. You do not need to plan the steps. You simply need to dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled, and the bridge will build itself. A young woman wanted to travel to Europe, but had no money, no time off from work, and no apparent way to make the trip happen. From her current state of consciousness, it was genuinely impossible, but she learned to ignore this outer reality. Every night she would imagine herself in the specific places she wanted to visit. She would feel the cobblestones under her feet in Paris, smell the flowers in an Italian garden, hear the sounds of a London street. She made these imaginal experiences so vivid that they became more real to her than her daily routine. And she would catch herself throughout the day starting to think about all the reasons she couldn't go. I don't have the money. I can't get time off. It's not practical. But each time she would stop these thoughts and return to her assumption, I am someone who travels to Europe. This is natural for me. This is my reality. She did not scheme or force. She simply persisted in this new state of consciousness while going about her normal life. Within 2 months, a series of unexpected events unfolded. Her company announced a new program, sending employees to European offices for training. She was selected. The trip was paid. She spent 3 weeks visiting the exact cities she had been imagining. The bridge had built itself, not through her conscious planning, but through her persistent assumption that she was someone who traveled to Europe. Let me leave you with this final truth. Your willingness to ignore outer reality and dwell in your desired state reveals whether you truly understand this teaching or whether you are still enslaved by the tyranny of the senses. If you can look at circumstances that contradict your desire and remain peaceful, confident, and certain, you understand. If you can maintain your assumption despite all evidence to the contrary, you understand. If you can give more reality to your imagination than to your perception, you understand. But if you are constantly disturbed by outer conditions, if you let evidence shake your faith, if you cannot hold your assumption in the face of contradiction, then you are still worshipping the false god of physical reality. You are still bowing before the mirror instead of recognizing that you are what creates the reflection. The outer world has no power except the power you give it through your acceptance of it as ultimate reality. The moment you withdraw that power, the moment you recognize it as reflection rather than source, as effect rather than cause, as shadow rather than substance, you are free. Free to create consciously, free to assume any state you choose, free to manifest any desire you hold, free to live from your imagination rather than from your circumstances. This is not escapism. This is not delusion. This is the most practical, powerful truth you can ever apply. Consciousness creates reality, and you control consciousness. Ignore outer reality as the final authority. Give your loyalty to your imagined reality. Persist in your assumption regardless of what you see, hear, or are told by others. And watch as the outer world, which has no creative power of its own, slowly and then suddenly conforms itself to match the reality you have dared to claim in consciousness. The mirror must reflect what stands before it, change what stands before it, and the reflection must change. This is law. This is power. This is your inheritance as a conscious creator. Ignore outer reality. Dwell in your desired state. Persist until assumption hardens into fact. Thank you, and good evening. As always, thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of consciousness. Remember, you are not here by accident. You are here because your soul is ready for this truth. Take these teachings and let them transform not just your mind, but your entire reality. Until we meet again in consciousness, keep assuming your greatness and living from the end of your desires. This is Best of Lectures, and I'll see you in the next video.